Hi, it's Phil here from Revive My Ride, and in this video I'm going to be doing a car interior carbon fibre wrap on this BMW 1 Series F20. So let's jump into the car and let's get started. So I've done my research, and this is one of the best carbon fibre films out there. It's called 3M 2080 carbon fibre. And the thing that I like about it is it's got like a satin type finish, and I'll try to show you that. And so you can really see the fibres in there, and also the way the light reflects off of it. And the other advantage it's got is it's textured, so you can actually feel the carbon fibre too. And this is a really great film for beginners because it's very pliable, meaning that it'll apply around corners and into nooks and crannies much more easily. But it's also really easy to apply and reapply, which as a beginner you might find you need to. Let's say you haven't quite got the film where you want it, or maybe there's a wrinkle in it. Okay, so before we can do the carbon fibre wrap, we need to remove the interior trim parts that we know we're going to want to work on. So step one, here's how to remove the individual pieces of the BMW interior trim. Okay, so we're going to get started with the piece of trim that's above the glove box here. And the first thing you need to do is open the glove box, and then we're going to start at this corner here, which is the furthest one from the air vent. And this whole piece comes out all in one go, gently levering with a trim tool at this edge. And that'll just come off. And basically these were the clips that we were undoing, and a lot of modern BMWs will have exactly the same clips as these. So if you've got a different model than this car, then probably you'll undo that in a similar sort of way. So next up we've got the door handle trims, and what you need to do with these is start at the top and then work your way down each side till you get to the bottom. Don't start at the bottom because there's a little hook at the bottom which might get damaged. And sometimes with these door handle trims you might find the gap a little bit too tight to get your trim tool in. Now I wouldn't normally advocate using a screwdriver because you can damage trim so easily, but if you can't get your trim tool in, what you can do is reach around the back edge where it'll never get seen, and then just get in the crack and just lever just enough that you can get the trim tool in. So I'll do that now. Okay, that's kind of got it started. And once you've got a little bit of a gap at the top that you can get your finger in, you can hold it off, and then that'll allow you to get the trim and keep working left and right all the way down until it comes loose. Okay, just like that. And with the door handle trims, I just like to mark up where they came from, just make it a little bit easier when refitting. Now this car being the BMW F20, it's a 4-door, so it means I've got 4 handles, but they're all exactly the same as that, so I'm not going to bother showing you the other ones. To remove the center console, you just need to get a trim tool in at this very back edge, and then also on the far side as well, and that'll allow you to pop the back edge up. And once you get your fingers in there, you just work your way forward. And at the very front of this piece of trim there's a hook, and so all you have to do is pull towards yourself, and then it'll come free of the hook as well. And then you just need to unplug the iDrive. Okay, so for the last little piece of trim that's on the F20, which is this one here, what you need to do is work on the bottom edges of this piece of trim. So start off with the bottom edge that's nearest to the steering wheel, which is just here, and just gently lever that a bit, and then the far side as well. And you can see the clips here that we're holding that in. So one of the reasons I'm putting a carbon fibre wrap onto my BMW interior trim is because the existing trims become quite worn, and actually you can feel that it's quite uneven there. And this is the driver's side handle, so you can see it's worn there as well. Now if you can feel it by hand, then chances are you'll be able to see it through the wrap. So what I'm going to do just to even it out a little bit is I have a Scotch-Brite pad. And this is a bit like 2000 grit sandpaper, so don't do this on your trim if in the future you think you might take the wrap back off and put it back to standard. But if it's really worn like mine, then you might want to consider just giving it a quick once over. So that's the worst one done. A few of the others need just a little bit of work. And you don't have to go too mad, you know, just kind of so that you can feel it feels even. So next up I'm going to clean the parts. And to do this, I've got some mutton cloth, which is like a lint-free natural fibre cloth. And also I have some panel wipe. But if you don't have panel wipe to hand, you can also use a rubbing alcohol. And all I'm going to do is give all of these surfaces just a nice light wipe down. Just to make sure there's no grease and oils or any contaminants on the surface. That'll stop the film from sticking properly. And you just have to repeat the process for all of the parts that you intend to wrap. Okay, so let's get our black carbon fibre vinyl wrap in place. Now when you're applying a normal film, you don't have to worry too much about which way you place it onto the part. But of course carbon fibre film has a pattern to it. So you have to do a little bit of planning about where you're going to fit it onto your part. And if you've got multiple parts that are similar to each other, like for example door handles, then you'll probably want them to look the same. The rule of thumb when you're working with carbon fibre, and if you're wanting like an OEM look, then from one of the corners, so just there, you're looking for a diagonal pattern across the piece. And if you want to get a similar look on the handles on the other side, then just move them around and just think about where that pattern's going to go. So I can see the diagonals going across this way. But if I lay this out similarly, then it's going across this way, which is effectively a different direction. Maybe something like that. And again, the pattern's going to come across. And if we look at this center console, a diagonal pattern across the part will probably look best with carbon fibre. And of course you can turn it more or less. But try to be consistent with it. So I bought these tools, and this is just an inexpensive kit, and this is for applying our vinyl wrap. So there's a couple of squeegees there, and there's a sharp craft knife here. That's one of the crucial bits when you're buying one of these sets. Make sure it always has one of those. And then various little spatulas. So once you've worked out which direction you want your pattern to run in, you can go ahead and cut out the piece of trim using a pair of scissors. Just make sure you're generous on the size of the piece, because you do need some overlap around the back, and it's better it be a little bit too large than too small. And now go ahead and peel the backer off of the film. And then the easiest way I find just to get it started with these parts is to lay the film down like that. And then you can just lower your piece down onto it. And that way you're much more likely to get it square and level how you want it. And now, starting at one end, you can start to smooth down all of the big flat surfaces if you've got them on this piece, which we do on this one. And you can start working your way along and smooth down the film just using your fingers, making sure you push the air bubbles out and trying not to get any creases. And now you can start working your way down towards the curved areas. And what you want to do is work from the inside to the outside edges, smoothing it on as you go. Now if you get any creases, like I've got a crease there, don't be afraid of pulling it back and then trying again, because that's one of the best things about this 3M 2080 film, is it allows you to do that. Now on these corners you might have to do a little bit of stretching to get it round the corners how you want it. So pay particular attention to the corners if you can. Now some of these curved areas, it's really important to stretch it if you can, to get it to follow the contour properly. Now this is the part that's actually quite time consuming, but what you'll find is you can just use your thumbs and work yourself along just a little bit at a time, smoothing it down and making sure you don't get any creases, and eventually you'll get there. Now working on the back edges, I'm just going to trim away some of this excess. I'm still going to leave a good 10mm or half an inch, but it'll just make it more manageable if I just get rid of this excess film at this point that I can see that we're not going to need. And so what I'm going to do now is tuck it around the edges. And you literally just need to fold the back edges of the film over and stick it to the back edges of the trim. By the way, it's a good idea to have cleaned the back edges of the trim with alcohol to ensure good adhesion. And I'm just going to use this little spatula just to smooth it down at the back. So all of these corners can be just a little bit tricky, but you just have to kind of stretch the material and pull it as best you can, and then eventually tuck it around the backs. And what you might find on some of these really tight corners is you need just a small relief cut, but it shouldn't go round onto the front of the part. It should be just to just to make it so that you can fold that over a bit better. And if you have anywhere like this where the film's fouling on a bit of the fasteners at the back, then you do have to just nick around those, because you want this film to sit flat at the back as best as it can. And also the little fasteners will need to be clear of film so that they'll snap back on properly when you refit the part to the car. And once you've got it to this stage where you're happy that it's tucked in really well, then grab one of your squeegees and just kind of go over it. And this will help you make sure any wrinkles or bubbles are gotten out of it. And if you see any kind of stubborn areas, you might not be able to see it on camera, but I can just see it there. And just work it really firmly with your thumbs. Anyway, we know that there's a void area here where one of the controls comes through. So when you get to this bit, then you just need to cut a little cross in. But don't cut it right to the edges. You know, make sure you have a good 10 or 15 millimeters from the edges, at least initially anyway. There we go. And now this will give you a little bit more stretch to start pushing this through. And you might find you have to make some other little relief cuts. So like I'm going to do a diagonal one here. Again, staying well away from the edge where you know it will become visible. And eventually, once you're happy that you've got it all poked through, then you can start to push it onto the inside edges and then just smooth it down. And then similar to before, where you know that it's going to be in the way a little bit of, say, one of the tabs for when you're refitting, then just trim that away. So you might find that some of these corners are a bit tricky to get folded under, and sometimes it's not a big deal, because when you're fitting this trim, if it goes behind something, you know, something else butts up to there, then you'll never see this edge. But the more tucked in you get it behind, then the longer this film will last without peeling back. But one thing you can do is apply a little bit of heat to this area. Now if you've got one, then of course the best way of applying heat is using a hot air gun, but don't use it on high, just use it on the low setting, because it is possible to overheat the film and you know, maybe make a hole appear in it or something like that. And if you don't have a hot air gun, then actually a hairdryer works really well, and in some ways it's a little bit safer to use because you're not as likely to overheat the film. But anyway, let's give it a little waft. So as you can see, that's looking a little bit tidier now. And I'm just going to do the same at this back edge. I could do with just tucking that in a little bit more, but can you see how it keeps springing back? Just makes it that little bit more flexible. Yeah, that's a lot better now. So we're going to move on to one of the vents, and the only part that we've got to wrap is this small piece here. Now at the back edge we're going to be able to tuck behind, so that's pretty easy, but this front edge is quite tricky to tuck into there, but what we're going to do is trim it as precisely as we can and just see if just a small fraction of the film we can tuck behind there and use a bit of heat to get it in there. So let's give that a try. Just to mention, when you're sat in the car, let's say you're in the driver's side, the center console is going to be where your left hand is, and you can see the pattern coming across because we went top left and then down and across. So now if you have that vent to your right, you're going to want the pattern to be going the same direction as that. So it's a little bit hard to imagine, but somewhere here there's a point, and we'll call it the center of that corner there, and then the film will come across. So let's see if we can work that out. Okay, so in order to get that sort of look, the pattern's running this way, and actually we want it to run this way on our part. So that means we're going to have to spin the part like this. So hopefully you can see the pattern in the background coming across, and it's coming towards this corner. So what I'll do is I'll have to cut out a piece somewhere here that's going to do this for me. So it's not really the most efficient use of material, but it's because of the way that we're trying to get the pattern. So I'm going to measure this. It's kind of like from here to here is the height of it. So I have to measure from about there and curving around, and that's about 110. And then it's worth putting a little bit more on, because if you're a little bit short, then it's a waste of a piece. So that's 120 there. Okay, and then the next thing is the length of it now. And again, I'm going to have a little bit more to make sure that I'm safe with it, because it does need to curve around this edge here. So I've got that at 190 now. And what I'm going to do now is just cut away a little bit of the material that I know I don't need, because what I'm going to do is just stick the film on this front here, and if it's all the way down over the vent, then it will get awkward to work with, you see. So I'm just going to cut a scallop out. There we go, like that. And then I'm just going to cut this corner away as well. So that's looking a little bit more like it. So now we're ready to go ahead and peel that and stick it on. And you have a little bit of flexibility to tilt this to get the angle that the fibre is running at how you want it. So it is very much by eye. Now at this stage you could always peel this back if you really wanted to. And so because you have the other part, then you can present it next to it and just make sure you're happy with the angles that you got. But anyway, I'm happy with that. Now at this top side, we've just got about 5mm of overhang, so that's pretty good. But it gets bigger and bigger the further we get round. And looking behind, I just have to see how much room I think there is to tuck it behind. But I can see I have a little bit too much here, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that away. Now because this is so curved, this sort of shape, tucking it round, especially around here, is going to be quite tricky. So I'm just going to heat it up just to make it a little bit more flexible. You'll see the film start to flop a little bit when you've got it warm. So that gives you an indication of it's warm enough to work with. And you can stretch it a little bit more easily when it's warm as well. Okay, so just remembering that the edge of our aluminium piece we're trying to cover is about there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is try and tuck it into that edge. Just see if I can push it in there a little bit. Can you see how it's going in? But the important thing is you can't have that stuck down, otherwise it won't push in the edge. So it is a bit tricky. And so maybe just a relief cut here, just to make this a bit easier, kind of breaks it into two pieces. Otherwise it's hard to do all in one go. So what I've been doing is, between the heat and the spatula and my thumbnail, to be honest, I've been getting the film down into that gap as far as I can. And this bit can't be stuck to the front here, otherwise there'll be no excess film to get down, so you need this to be slack here. So I'm actually pretty happy with that, but I'm going to give it a little bit more heat and just see if I can get it as far down as possible, because this is one of the risk areas, because there isn't very far for the film to go down into that gap. This is an area that can peel back over time. So I'm going to have to do this relief cut just a little bit further in order to give me some film to work with. About there. I've stopped just a little bit short. But what I'm going to do now that I've got this pushed in as far as I can on the edges is use the knife to kind of cut away the excess. I tucked the film around the back at the top exactly the same as on the other parts, and in the end you end up with the piece looking like this. And the left-hand vent, although larger, is very similar to the small one that we just did, so I did it in exactly the same way. And again, you end up with a part looking a bit like this. Okay, so we're finally getting to the last few pieces, and these are the door handles, which I expect to be the trickiest ones because of the curves. You know, they're just curves everywhere. And if you have a BMW F20, then it means it's a 4-door car. So you'll have 4 handles, but they'll all be the same. So that means I can take away these and just show you the one. Now, as with all of the other pieces that we've done, we have to be very mindful of the pattern in relation to the center console and the left air vent, which it will be in close proximity to. And so the passenger side door handle goes in this sort of orientation when you're sat inside the car. And so this is what your visual's going to be. So it's up to you to decide what you think's going to look best. And I believe that the OEM setup is like this. So you can see what that looks like there. So this is what I'm suggesting is going to be the best way of doing each of these door handles. And of course, if you're wrapping a different interior, you know, a BMW or any other car, your handles might be in a different position and you might make a different decision entirely. And this position on the film, as opposed to that, gives us the angle that we want. So I'm just getting it positioned and then I'm going to cut out a piece that does the job for me. So I'll just get this peeled back and then I'll decide how to position it on the interior trim piece. And what you can do is just drape it over and just make sure it's going to reach all of the edges properly. Okay, so you can see what the problem is on a curved item sometimes. You know, that's going to cause a crease, and there's a few other areas as well. So you're going to need a lot more heat on this piece, so might as well get started with it. Start at one end, get it how we want it and work our way along. And don't be afraid to peel it back if you need to get it how you want it. And this comes in really handy for getting creases out as well. And so between using heat to get all of the creases out and then tucking it around behind like we did on the previous pieces, you can end up with the handle looking like this. So I've been running around for about a week with no trimming, and to be honest it does look really tatty. But I've got it all finished now, so here it all is. I'm refitting the BMW interior trim should be really quick and easy to do because most of the pieces just snap back into place. So in about 5 minutes time I should have all my new pieces in place, and then I'll show you a really good before and after. And we'll make a start with this vent here. There's a couple of clips here that just snap into place at the bottom and a couple at the top as well. And the only other really important bit is just making sure you line up this part of the vent with the ducting that's in there. So we might as well go ahead and pop this passenger side handle on while we're in the area. And the only knack to it really is that little hook there needs to go behind this tab. So you're better off starting at the bottom and getting it behind that first. Okay, now you can go ahead and press it on the rest of the way. Yeah, and then we just have the passenger side handle to get on. Exactly the same thing. And it's just the same as the other vent really, where you line up the clips and make sure you line up the ducting to the vent. There we go, snaps in nicely, doesn't it? So for this final piece, which is the center console, we just have the iDrive controller, which has to go back on the underneath of this trim. And it literally just drops in place, and then there's 3 screws that hold it in place. So make sure you plugged in the iDrive. At the front, you'll see there's a little hook, a bit like the door handles. So just gonna make sure I hook that under at the front, and then pop all the rest of it down. That's made quite a difference. Okay, so that's it. That's how to carbon fibre wrap BMW interior trim. To be honest, it's pretty easy, but it is a little time consuming. And I'll be honest, I'm really happy with the results that I got here. As I said at the start of the video, I'm aiming for that OEM carbon fibre trim look that you get in the high-end BMWs. And I think, you know, I pretty much achieved it. You know, let me know what you thought in the comments. All that there's left to say is, if you like the video, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content just like this, I've got lots of stuff coming up, then please give me a subscribe and maybe I'll see you in the next video. Okay, thanks for watching, bye for now.